Studio Hire, Module 6, Unit 1, Mon Bahut, talking about your school and using the pronouns il and elle. So, first of all, the word Mon Bahut can mean a chest. It can be as in a chest freezer as well. It can also be a type of desk, but here it's used as a familiar way of talking about your school. So here is the overview, here are the learning objectives. You'll have done this before, talking about your school in particular. This is looking at how you talk about other people. So often in French, we're getting you to talk about your experience, so you know how to say je for everything. But in this unit, we're really going to do a lot of practice of how you say he and she, il, elle. We're also going to revise comparisons, so comparing adjectives, saying something that is bigger, smaller, whatever. We're going to be looking at how you work out the meaning of new words. In the reading exam and the listening exam, the requirement is that the exam boards must put in words which are not in the specification. But they're not going to put in words which are absolutely, you've got no chance of being able to work out. So we'll be looking at methods that you use to be able to work things out. And here, as you can see, the grammar is, as it said up here, using the pronouns il and elle, using the third person singular. First person is je, second person is tu, third person is il, elle, or on. So there's the key language that we're going to be doing. Really, there's none of that which is new. It's all revising things that you've done before. This section is on revising numbers. In particular, for example, in the topic of education, you often have to use numbers, saying about the times of day, when things start and finish, length of lessons and homework, saying how long a lesson lasts, how long you spent on your homework, how many lessons you have, so there are so many lessons per day, how many subjects you study, so I do 8 subjects, 9 subjects, how many people there are in the school, so there are so many pupils, there are so many teachers, and how far away you live from the school. So every single topic uses numbers, but this one in particular uses numbers. So let's just do a bit of revision. Separately, I'll be giving you a sheet which has got the main numbers, and they're also in your planner. So remember these main, you always know the ones 1 to 20, but 20 for 20, 30, 30, 40, 40, 50, 50, 60, 60. And then the more difficult ones are always after 69, 70 for 70, going up to 79 for 79. And then 80 for 420s, that's 80. And then 90 for 90. And 100. You've seen this before. This is where I've put out the ones which are particularly demanding. So 60 is fine, 60, 61, 62, etc. But it's when it comes to 70, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. And it may help you to be able to think about what it means. So 60 and 1, 62, 63, and so on. Here's 60, 10, 60 and 11, 60, 12, and 60, 17, for example. And then we get to the 80s. Again, 80 is 4 20s, 80. Notice there's an S on the end, 80. And then 81 is 421, 81. And 82, 82. Again, you may find it helpful to analyse it that way. So, for example, 93 is 93 for 2013. 97 is 97 for 2017, until you get to 100. So you'll all be at different stages. Just make sure that you very frequently revise numbers. It's not something you can do at the last minute. You've just got to do it gradually. So what about times? You'll have done this right back in year 7, and you'll have revised it every year. Let's just look at it again though. So if you're talking about times, you just as in English, you have the 24-hour system and you have the 12-hour system. Le système sur 24 heures, that's how they say it, the system on 24 hours. Le système sur 12 heures, the 12-hour clock. So let's just look at the differences there. So 0 heure for 0 hours, and it's the same in French for that one. 1 heure is also 1 heure, 2 heures, 2 heures, 3 heures, 3 heures, 4 heures, 4 heures, 5 heures, 5 heures, 6 heures, 6 heures, 7 heures, 7 heures, 8 heures, 8 heures, 9 heures, and notice the pronunciation of the if it's on its own, if the word number 9 is on its own, it's neuf. But if it's followed by a vowel and extra Y, it becomes like a V. 9 heures, 9 heures. 9 heures, 10 heures, 10 heures, 11 heures, 11 heures, 12 heures, 12 heures, or you could say midi. So that thus far, it's really the same on the hour. You might, though, say for the 24-hour clock that it's 1 hour in the morning, 1 heure du matin, 2 heures du matin, 3 heures du matin, etc. What about later? This is where it becomes different, doesn't it? So 13 heures is 1 heure, 14 heures, 2 heures, 15 heures, 3 heures, 16 heures, 4 heures, 17 heures, 5 heures. And those may well be de l'après-midi, in the afternoon. 1 heure de l'après-midi, 2 heures de l'après-midi. Then we get into the evening, 18 heures, 6 heures du soir. 19 heures, 7 heures du soir. 20 heures, 8 heures du soir. 21 heures, 9 heures du soir. Notice again the 9 heures like a V. 22 heures, 10 heures du soir. 23 heures, 11 heures du soir. And then 24 heures can be 0 heure again, or it could be minuit for midnight. Now let's look at the way in which you would say things when you've got the minutes as well. And it's quite interesting doing this exercise to see how we just take it for granted that we know how to say it in English. But it must be quite difficult for someone learning English to know how to say these things. So we've got the 24-hour clock and the 12-hour clock. Let's look at the difference. So if it's 1 o'clock, 1 heure. If I put an equals, it means it's the same in French. 1 heure, 1 heure. But we tend to say at 1 and then at 1 o'clock. So you do have to have the word hour in, whereas we don't put in the word hour. It's just 1 hour. It's 1 heure, and we just say at 1. I'll see you at 1. You can't do that in French. You've got to say je te verrai à 1 heure. What about this one? 1 heure 5. We tend to say 1:05, don't we, for that one? We don't say 1:05 ever. I've been thinking about this. It's 1:05, I think we say. And in the 12-hour clock, it's the same in French. 1 heure 5, the same, but we would say 1:05. 1 heure 10 for 1:10. So again, we don't have the word hour, they do. It's the same in French, 1 heure 10, but we might say 1:10. 1 heure 15 for 1:15. 1 heure et quart, 1:15 is another way of saying it. In the 12-hour clock, 1 hour and 1/4 of an hour, 1 heure et quart. They wouldn't do that for the 24-hour clock. They wouldn't say et quart. 24-hour system, 1:20 is 1 heure 20. Exactly the same here, 1 heure 20. But we might say 1:20. We've got two ways of saying that. They've just got one. Exactly the same here. 1 heure 25 is the same, 1 heure 25. But we say 1:25 or 1:25. 1 heure 30 has a different one for the 12-hour, 1 heure et demie for 1:30. So 1:30 or 1:30. Right, 1 heure 35, 1:35. But we could also say 2 heures moins 25, 2 hours less 25, or 25 to 2. 1 heure 40 is 1:40. Can be 2 heures moins 20, 2 hours less 20, we say 20 to 2. 1 heure 45, 1:45. Or 12-hour clock, 2 heures moins le quart, 2 hours less the quarter, we say 1/4 to 2. 1 heure 50, 1:50. 2 heures moins 10, 2 hours less 10, we say 10 to 2. 1 heure 55, 1:55. Or 2 heures moins 5, 2 hours less 5, we say 5 to 2. And then we end up with the 2 heures for at 2, and they would say 2 heures, 2 o'clock. So as far as you're concerned, you really need to be able to understand all of those. In a listening exam, in a reading exam, any of those could be used. But perhaps when you come to prepare for your speaking, you might decide, I'm going to either stick to this one or I'm going to stick to this one. It really doesn't matter which one you use. Let's see how you can put numbers and times into practice with some basic questions about school. Mon collège s'appelle et il se trouve, j'étudie une matière en tout. Il y a un élève et un professeur. En plus, on a un labo de sciences et une salle de classe. Le matin, on commence les cours à 1. La pause déjeuner est de 1 à 1. L'après-midi, les cours se terminent à 1. On a environ 1 minute ou heure de devoir chaque soir. So see if you can fill in the gaps and then when you're ready, resume to see some possible answers. Possible answers coming up now. Alors, mon collège s'appelle, my school's called the Ashcombe School, et il se trouve à Dorking, and it is in Dorking. Notice that this is a good use of the il. It said that during this chapter they're going to look at third person, so referring to the school, it is il se trouve because it's masculine. J'étudie, and you might have said huit matières, oui, and it would be pronounced huit matières. Neuf matières would be a f because it's not a vowel H or Y. 10 matières en tout. Notice that with huit and dix on their own, you hear the end, huit, dix. But when followed by a word like matière, you don't. Huit matières, 10 matières. And this is partly why numbers can cause such a problem with listening, because they sound different according to whatever follows them. So do get used to that. So how many pupils are there? Il y a 1500 élèves, 1500, et 100 professeurs. En plus, moreover, we've got, so how are you going to pronounce that? With labo de sciences, 10 labos de sciences, et 60 salles de classe. They may not be the exact numbers. Le matin, in the morning, on commence les cours. We begin lessons à 9h05, at 5:09. And that would be whether you're using the 24-hour clock or the 12-hour clock. It would be 9h05. No other way of saying it. And notice the V, V sound of 9h05. La pause déjeuner, the lunch break, est de. Now you can decide. You can either go for 12-hour clock, 1h10, or 24-hour clock, 13h10, à 1h50 or 13h50. L'après-midi, in the afternoon, les cours se terminent. Notice you do not pronounce the ENT. It's the lesson's end. Conjugated ENT, you never hear that. Les cours se terminent à, and then either 3h30 ou 15h30. You decide. On a environ, we have around about 2 heures, I would say, de devoir chaque soir. We have about 2 hours of homework each evening. And just to show you, I have come across a little website where you can convert your numbers. Let's see whether or not it works now. If I click on there, and it's opened on my second screen over here. There we are, numbers converter. So just enter the digits you want to translate into a French number and click OK. So shall we see if it's any good? So say I think we've actually got 1,475 students. 1475, and that's correct. So it converts the digits into the number. I do think when it comes to preparing for your speaking or writing, it's good to write it out in letters so that you remember it. Should we just do one other? So the one that we've just done was 1500, was that correct? Yes, 1500. Okay. Page 122, exercise 1, reading, match the questions to the answers. And these are questions which you're going to be answering later on as part of an exercise. When you're ready for the answers, resume. Answers coming up now, with translations, of course. Comment s'appelle ton collège? What's your college called? The answer is F. Mon collège s'appelle le collège Molière. My school is called le collège Molière. They like calling schools after famous people, and this is a famous author of the 17th century, Molière, who wrote comedies. Beaucoup d'écoles en France portent le nom d'un personnage historique. A lot of schools in France bear the name of a historical person. C'est quelle sorte d'école? It's which sort of school? B. C'est un collège mixte pour les élèves de 11 à 16 ans. It's a mixed school for pupils from 11 to 16. Il y a combien d'élèves? There are how many pupils? Des. Il y a 750 élèves en tout, altogether. That's a nice little extra, isn't it, to have en tout. Et 45 professeurs and 45 teachers. 4. Quels sont les horaires du collège? What are the times of the day at the school? A. Les cours commencent à 8h30. Lessons begin at 8:30. You know, I'm going to tell you, don't pronounce the ENT. Les cours commencent à 8h30. La récré, that's short for la récréation break, est à 10h15, is at 10:15, or it could have been 10h15, et dure 15 minutes and lasts 15 minutes. On a 1h30 pour le déjeuner. We have an hour and a half for lunch. Et les cours, how am I going to pronounce this? Finissent, no ENT, finissent, finish, so lessons finish à 16h ou à 17h, at 4 or at 5. 5. Il y a combien de cours par jour? How many lessons are there per day? Alors là, c'est I. Il y a 7 cours, there are 7 lessons, de 55 minutes par jour, or 55 minutes per day. Mais le mercredi après-midi, il n'y a pas cours. But on Wednesday afternoon, there aren't any lessons. 6. Quelle matière étudies-tu? Which subjects do you study? Alors ça c'est H. J'étudie, I study. Very common thing there is for people to say étudier, because they see an E there, but it's not. It's étudie, étudie. The verb to study is étudier with an R. But like that, it's just j'étudie, I study. 12 matières, 12 subjects. Dont can mean of which, but it can also just mean including. Dont. Le français, les maths, French maths, l'histoire géo, humanities, et la technologie in DT. Toutes mes matières sont obligatoires. All my subjects are compulsory. Il n'y a pas de matière facultative avant le bac. There are no optional subjects before and the baccalauréat is the equivalent of the A-level. Numéro 7. Quelle est ta matière préférée? What is your favorite subject? Donc ça c'est G. Ma matière préférée, my favorite subject, c'est les arts plastiques, it's art, and that is the sort of art that you do at school of painting, drawing, as opposed to studying fine art. Car, because, for, j'adore dessiner, I love to draw, et je suis douée pour ça, and I'm talented in that, I'm gifted for that. 8. Comment sont les professeurs? What are the teachers like? Comment is often a question word that people get stuck on. You've learnt it with comment t'appelles-tu, which literally means how do you call yourself? Not what, really. How do you call yourself? So, how or what like. Comment is how or what like are the teachers. Alors ça c'est C. Pour la plupart. For the majority, for the most part. Nice little extra phrase there, write it down. Pour la plupart. Les profs sont sympas. Teachers are nice. Ooh, do you notice there? Plural. You'd expect to see an S, wouldn't you? Why not? Because sympa is short for the word sympathique, which doesn't mean sympathetic. It means kind, nice. And because it's been shortened, you shouldn't have an S on the end. You sometimes see it, but it shouldn't be there. Les profs sont sympas, but il y en a, there are some of them, who are un peu plus sévères, a bit stricter. Il y en a qui, there are of them some who. That's a good phrase, il y en a. 9. Qu'est-ce que tu penses de ton collège? What do you think of your school? Ça c'est E. Je trouve que les journées sont trop longues. I find that the days are too long. And that's, the journée has the sense of the length of the day, rather than un jour, one day. Et qu'on a trop de contrôle, and we have too many assessments. Contrôle for assessments. But, les profs sont excellents. The teachers are excellent. There, because it's a normal, regular adjective, you do have the S agreeing with it. So it could be now that you look through it yourself and see, can you say it aloud, and can you translate it? And these are all phrases that you'll be able to use as models for when you come to do your own versions. One of the objectives of this unit is to revise using the third person, he or she, not just always talking about I and what I do. And this listening exercise on page 122, exercise 2, is giving you a model of that. You'll also be able to use it in talking about your own school. So listen to the audio, see if you can fill in the gaps, and then when you're ready, listen to the answers afterwards.
Unité 1. Mon bahut. Page 122. Exercice 2. Écoutez l'interview de Maria et complétez ses réponses en français. 1.
Maria, comment s'appelle ton école?
Je suis française, mais j'étudie à Londres parce que c'est là que j'habite. Mon école s'appelle le lycée français Charles de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle, c'est un ancien président de la France.
2.
C'est quelle sorte d'école?
C'est une école, surtout pour les enfants français qui habitent à Londres. Il y a une école primaire, un collège et un lycée regroupés au même endroit, à South Kensington.
3.
Il y a combien d'élèves?
C'est une grande école. Il y a 4000 élèves. 48 nationalités différentes sont représentées. Mais la majorité des élèves, presque 82%, sont de nationalité française.
4.
Quels sont les horaires de l'école?
La journée commence à 8h30 et les cours se terminent à 17h ou à 18h.
5.
Il y a combien de cours par jour?
Il y a 7 ou 8 cours par jour.
6.
Quelle matière étudies-tu?
J'étudie les matières qui sont obligatoires en France.
7.
Quelle est ta matière préférée?
Je n'ai pas de matière préférée. Je les aime toutes, sauf le PS. Mais j'aime surtout les langues vivantes. Je fais de l'anglais, de l'espagnol et de l'allemand.
8.
Comment sont les professeurs?
Les profs sont généralement très bons. Ils expliquent tout très clairement et ils nous préparent bien pour nos examens.
9.
Qu'est-ce que tu penses de ton école?
Je trouve que mon école est énorme, mais j'aime bien être élève ici. Je suis fière de mon école.
Answers are coming up now. Alors, numéro 1, Maria va au lycée français Charles de Gaulle à Londres. So the name of the school is Charles de Gaulle, who was a very important person in the Second World War, led the resistance, the French resistance, and the school is in Londres. And it was actually from just next door to where the school is that Charles de Gaulle gave his call to French people using the BBC radio. He was in exile. He'd gone away. He wasn't in occupied Germany, and he was calling them all to resist the Germans who were occupying France. So it's a very historic place, in fact. Charles de Gaulle is the name of the person. So what should you put here? C'est une école pour les enfants. It's a school for French children, les enfants français, or you could have said qui habitent à Londres. French school, French children who live in London. Il y a une école primaire, there's a primary school, un collège, college school, that's for the 11 to 14, et un lycée, and that's the grammar school for 15 to 18, regroupés au même endroit. They're all in the same place in South Kensington. And if you go there, if you go up to South Kensington, you actually feel as if you're in part of France. It's where the French people tend to live, and they send their children to this school. There are other schools as well in London for which follow the French curriculum for French people who live in London. 3. Il y a, did you get this? Il y a 4000 élèves, 4,000 students. 48 nationalités, 48 nationalities sont représentées, represented. And 82% des élèves sont français. So 82% are French. Did you get those big numbers? I hope so. 4. La journée, the day, begins at 8h30. And that's just as it would be in France. They tend to begin sometimes as early as 8 o'clock. 8:30 is quite normal. Et les cours se terminent. And the lessons finish, remember you don't pronounce the ENT, à 17h or à 18h. And that is very typical in France. They have very long school days. 5. Il y a 7 ou 8 cours par jour. There are 7 or 8 lessons per day. That again is quite typical in France. And quelle matière? Maria étudie les matières. She studies subjects qui sont obligatoires en France, that are compulsory in France. Did you manage to get the S on the end of obligatoire? 7. Elle aime, she likes, toutes les matières, all subjects, sauf, except for le PS. You should know that's éducation physique et sportive, PE. As for languages, comme langue, and she talked about les langues vivantes, which are modern languages, elle fait, she does, de l'anglais, English, de l'espagnol, Spanish, et de l'allemand, and German. Numéro 8. How are the teachers? What are the teachers like? Les profs sont généralement très bons. They are generally very good, and there you would have the agreement at the end with an S. Final question. What do you think of your school? Qu'est-ce que tu penses de ton école? I find that mon école est énorme. L'école est énorme. It is enormous. And good to be using different words other than just grand or très grand. I use the word énorme, and that makes it sound very French. But she likes being a student here. Je suis fière de mon école. You had that in the first unit. She is proud of her school. So just to end this section, if you put in Lycée Charles de Gaulle, Londres, and then look at the images, you can see what it looks like. So it's part of South Kensington, but it really, you go in there and you do feel almost as if you're in France. It's all laid out as a French school would be. The classes don't have any decorations. They obviously use French cleaning products to clean it. There's just a feeling about it. But can you see they don't wear uniform? They are very generous, actually. They've let the ALL, which is my Association for Language Learning, they let us use it sometimes for our conferences. So I've got to know them quite well there. There's the entrance there. So you go in there and the school is on the right. The school is just there. And then right next to it is the Institut Français, which is the French Institute, where they've got a fantastic cinema. And we regularly will take sixth formers to go up there so that you can see a French film, see a bit of French culture, but also you can see the school across next door. Page 122, exercise 3, speaking. Now, with everything you've done on the previous unit, point de départ, and what you've done so far, you've got a lot of examples now you can use to be able to answer these 9 questions. Comment s'appelle ton collège? What's your school called? C'est quelle sorte d'école? It's what sort of school? Il y a combien d'élèves? There are how many students? Quels sont les horaires du collège? What are the times of the school? Il y a combien de cours par jour? There are how many lessons per day? Quelle matière étudies-tu? Which subjects do you study? Quelle est ta matière préférée? What's your favorite subject? Comment sont les professeurs? What are the teachers like? Qu'est-ce que tu penses de ton collège? What do you think of your school? So under there, that's from exercise 1, where you've got model answers, so you can just use those and adapt them. Also, you can look at and this is what you're leading up to, is to be able to give a nice full answer to this question. Oh, I've misspelt that. Parlons de ton collège. Let's talk about your school. And here's an example. So, j'ai de la chance. I'm lucky. Je vais à un collège que j'aime beaucoup. I go to a school I like very much. Mon collège s'appelle the Ashcombe School. Ashcombe, c'est le nom d'un personnage historique, Lord Ashcombe. C'est un collège mixte pour les élèves de 11 jusqu'à 18 ans. Il y a à peu près 1400 élèves en tout et 100 professeurs. So that's one answer, but it would be nice for you to be able to use what you've learnt here and also what you've learnt in the listening to develop that. before you get ready to do your speaking part for this unit, have a go at the vocabulary and pronunciation and really put on a very, very good accent. Notice in particular the endings for verbs. That's the really important part of this particular unit, is showing that you can use not only about what you do, I, but also say what it does, the school, or what she does, somebody else. There'll be a gap after each French utterance for you to be able to say it aloud.
Mon bahut.
My school.
Comment s'appelle ton collège?
What's your school called?
Mon collège s'appelle.
My school is called.
C'est quelle sorte de collège?
What sort of school is it?
C'est un collège mixte pour les élèves de 11 à 16 ans.
It's a mixed school for pupils from 11 to 16.
Il y a combien d'élèves?
How many pupils are there?
Il y a 750 élèves et 45 professeurs.
There are 750 pupils and 45 teachers.
Quels sont les horaires du collège?
What are the school hours?
Les cours commencent à 8h30.
Lessons start at 8:30 a.m.
La récré est à 10h15 et dure 15 minutes.
Break is at 10:15 a.m. and lasts 15 minutes.
On a 1h30 pour le déjeuner.
We have an hour and a half for lunch.
Les cours finissent à 16h.
Lessons finish at 4 p.m.
Il y a combien de cours par jour?
How many lessons are there per day?
Il y a 7 cours de 55 minutes par jour.
There are 7 lessons of 55 minutes per day.
Le mercredi après-midi, il n'y a pas cours.
There are no lessons on Wednesday afternoon.
Quelle matière étudies-tu?
What subjects do you study?
J'étudie 12 matières dont
I study 12 subjects, including.
toutes mes matières sont obligatoires.
All my subjects are compulsory.
Quelle est ta matière préférée?
What is your favorite subject?
Ma matière préférée, c'est les arts ménagers, car
My favorite subject is home technology because
j'adore cuisiner, car
I love cooking because
je suis doué pour ça.
I'm talented at that.
Comment sont les professeurs?
What are your teachers like?
Les profs sont sympas, sévères.
The teachers are nice, strict.
Qu'est-ce que tu penses de ton collège?
What do you think of your school?
Je trouve que
I find that
les journées sont trop longues.
the days are too long.
On a trop de contrôles.
We have too many tests.
Les profs sont excellents.
The teachers are excellent.
Ashcombe School. Ashcombe, c'est le nom d'un personnage historique, Lord Ashcombe. C'est un collège mixte pour les élèves de 11 jusqu'à 18 ans. Il y a à peu près 1400 élèves en tout et 100 professeurs. So that's one answer, but it would be nice for you to be able to use what you've learnt here and also what you've learnt in the listening to develop that. Page 123, exercise 4, reading, but you're also going to be hearing it as well. So you're going to listen and read this text. I said right at the beginning that one of the aims of this unit was to give you some experience of having to guess the meanings of phrases. And normally you can work them out from the context, because you might understand the bits around it. You might be able to think, well, that probably means this. Or sometimes there are cognates, and there at the bottom there you can see when you need to work out the meaning of a new word, look at it. Is it a cognate or a near cognate? Does it look like any other French word you know? But do watch out for false friends. So here they're already telling you, for the very first one, that chance may look as if it means chance, but it doesn't. It actually means luck. The other way is to look at the context, what comes before, but also what comes next, and can you make an educated guess? Part of the GCSE is to check whether or not you can make educated guesses. So have a go at doing the exercises now. And the first one is to look at the phrases which are in mauve, and can you work out what the English might mean? So let's listen to it now, and then obviously answers will be coming up in a moment.
Page 123. Exercice 4. Écoutez et lisez. Devinez l'anglais pour les 10 expressions en mauve. Une journée type au Centre national du football de Clairefontaine. Maxime a de la chance. Il est élève au Centre national du football près de Paris, où 23 joueurs maximum sont admis chaque année. Maxime, 13 ans, suit les traces de grands footballeurs comme Thierry Henry et Louis Saha. Maxime est en internat du dimanche 21h au vendredi soir, mais le week-end, il rentre chez ses parents. Bien sûr, le centre est très bien aménagé pour le sport. Il y a 8 terrains de foot, un gymnase, une salle de musculation et une piste d'athlétisme. Une journée type pour Maxime commence à 6h30 quand il se lève et prend son petit déjeuner. À l'intérieur de Clairefontaine, il porte son uniforme Nike. Mais le matin, il s'habille comme tous les autres collégiens, en jean, basket et sweat. Puis il monte dans le car de ramassage scolaire qui l'amène à un collège voisin où il a 6 heures de cours par jour. Pour ses profs, les résultats scolaires des jeunes joueurs sont aussi importants que leurs performances sur le terrain de foot. Pour Maxime, les cours finissent à 15 heures. De retour au centre, il a 2 heures d'entraînement. Puis, il se douche, il dîne et il fait ses devoirs. Après un peu de temps libre, Maxime se couche à 22 heures.
So, answers coming up now. First of all, Maxime a de la chance. Did you get that? A de la chance means is lucky. So they express it as has luck. A bit like, how old are you? I am 15. They say I have 15. So avoir de la chance. Il a de la chance. Next one. Sont admis. Where 23 players maximum something each year. I expect you got it, are admitted. It looks very much like the English. So there, that's to do with cognates, admission. Next one, did you get this? Maxime, 13 ans, suit les traces de grands footballeurs comme Thierry Henry et Louis Saha. Suit les traces means follow in the traces, in the footsteps of. So you might have worked that out. Est en internat. It may be from being able to understand that he was something from Sunday to Friday, but at the weekend he goes to his parents. It's at boarding school. Bien sûr, le centre est très bien aménagé pour le sport. It's very well equipped. Then you might have been able to work it out. That's a good word to know. Often people don't know how to say it. It's got good facilities. Say it's well equipped instead of it has good facilities. And I'm pretty sure you would have got this one. Une piste d'athlétisme is an athletics track. You might have already heard people talking about being on the piste as being if they go skiing. Even if you yourself don't go skiing, you might have heard people talking about that. So that's an athletics track. Next one. Comme tous les autres collégiens is like all other pupils at the college. Le car de ramassage scolaire. I think you know le car anyway. It's obviously to do with school, so it is the school bus. And le terrain de foot would be the football pitch. And then finally, il a 2 heures d'entraînement. You can see that's a cognate, isn't it? It's very, very similar to the English of 2 hours of training, 2 heures d'entraînement. Now we're going into exercise 5, which is based on the same text, page 123, exercise 5. And this is why I didn't give you a full translation of the text, because now you're going to show whether or not you can work out synonyms. So always there will be in the reading test a section where the text is in French and the questions are in French. And obviously they can't make it so that they're just lifting words out of the text, because otherwise it makes it too easy. So really it's going to be a test of synonyms. They will be saying, is this true or false? They'll make a statement. You won't be able to lift it from the text, but it'll mean the same thing or it'll mean something different. So we really do have to train ourselves in doing this. So I want you to reread the text in exercise 4. I'm deliberately not telling you what these questions mean. Not only are you writing true or false, but you must correct the 4 false sentences. So that this is to give you practice in doing what you'd actually have to do for the exam. So please don't skip this. Don't think, oh, well, I've understood it, I don't have to write what the truth is. I deliberately want you to be able to show that you understand it, because that may well come up in the test itself. So as I've put here, the exam technique is that when the questions are in French, spot the synonyms and the traps. And I've spelt questions incorrectly again. I'm sorry about that. So when you're ready for the answers, resume. So answers coming up now. Let's go through one by one. So did you understand this? L'école de Maxime n'accepte que 23 élèves au maximum par année. Now for the higher level, you're meant to know a variety of negatives, and one of them is ne que means only. So nearly always you'll find there's something testing that. So it only accepts 23. Maximum, and what does it say? He's lucky. He goes to this place where 23 players maximum are admitted. So it does mean the same. It just doesn't mean it doesn't accept. It means that they only accept the 23, and that's the same as saying the maximum is 23. So the answer to that is vrai. Number 2. Thierry Henry est un ancien élève de son école. So Thierry Henry is a former student of the school. Maxime suit les traces de grands footballeurs, comme he's following the footsteps of footballers as Thierry Henry. So they're not obviously taking exactly the same. They wouldn't put that he's following the traces of, because that's obvious. They'll put it in a different way. So that again is true. And by the way, ancien means former when it's before the noun. And when it's afterwards, it does mean ancient. So I often say at this point, if you see me out in the street when you've left school, you could say to a French person, ah, voici mon ancien prof, here's my former teacher. And I wouldn't be very happy if I heard you saying, ah, voici mon prof ancien, here's my ancient teacher. Although after school, I suppose you can say what you like. Number 3. So Maxime est en internat toute la semaine, y compris le weekend. So Maxime is boarder all week, including the weekend, and you're told he's in a boarder du dimanche, from Sunday au vendredi soir to Friday evening, but at the weekend, il rentre chez ses parents. He goes to his parents. So the answer to that is false. So you should have written Maxime est en internat du dimanche au vendredi soir. Number 4. Les installations sportives dans son école sont meilleures que dans une école ordinaire. So the sports equipment. And there, I told you about it's well equipped et très bien aménagé. But you could have said les installations sportives for the sports facilities. And that's what they've done here. So they're better than in an ordinary school. that does actually mean the same, so that is true. It's well equipped. 5. Maxime porte un uniforme scolaire toute la journée. He wears a school uniform all day. And you're told he wears his Nike uniform when he's within the sports area, but he dresses like other people in the morning. So it's false, because he just wears a uniform when he's within Clairefontaine. 6. Il a cours dans un collège près du centre Clairefontaine. He has lessons in a school near to the centre Clairefontaine. Well, there we know that it is true, because it says then he gets into the coach, which takes him to a neighbouring school where he's got 6 hours of lessons per day. So that is true. C'est vrai. Okay? So collège voisin means neighbouring school. And they said here un collège près du, near to. So it's testing, do you actually know that that's what it means? Numéro 7. Ses profs pensent que le football est plus important que son éducation. His teachers believe that football is more important than his education. And this is where they say, of course not. Pour ses profs, for his teachers, les résultats scolaires, the school results, des jeunes joueurs, of young players, sont aussi importants que leur performance sur le terrain de foot. They are as important as their football performances. So the answer to that is false. And you could have just said, ses profs pensent que l'éducation est aussi importante que le football. 8. L'après-midi, Maxime se repose. In the afternoon, he relaxes. No. Pour Maxime, les cours finissent à 15 heures. So lessons finish at 1500 hours at 3 o'clock. De retour au centre, back at the centre, il a 2 heures d'entraînement. He has 2 hours of training. So the answer there is false. L'après-midi, Maxime a 2 heures d'entraînement. So, in summary, those are the answers that you should have had. Page 123, exercise 6, writing, translation. In the written test, there'll be 2 open-ended exercises. One where you have to write 90 words in response to 4 bullet points. One where you have to write 150 words in response to 2 bullet points. And then there'll be a writing which will be about this sort of length. It normally has about 9 chunks. And even if you can't get one of the chunks, you'll get marks for the bits that you can do. This text has been put together deliberately to check the things which you've been looking at in this unit. That is, talking about somebody in the third person, not I, but Clara is. So you've got to show that you know those verbs, and you've got the little grammar note there about how to write things in the third person. So regular ER verbs, the third person ends in E, but there are irregular ones which you have to learn, like he or she goes, he or she does, and you've just got to learn those. And the other thing is to know that possessive adjectives are son, sa, c'est, according to the noun it accompanies. It isn't to do with the person who owns those things. So the word for his and her is exactly the same, but it changes. If the thing it's describing is masculine, it's going to be son. If it's feminine, it's sa, and if it's plural, it's c'est. So see if you can apply that to these sentences now. Write them out in French, and when you're ready for the answers, resume. Oh, and by the way, if you could do the times as well using letters rather than figures, just to show that you've learnt that as well. Merci. Okay, answers coming up now. Alors, qu'est-ce que c'est? C'est Clara est élève. And you don't need the word for a pupil. With any profession or if you're a student, you don't need an article. Clara est élève is a student, and it's the same whether it's masculine or feminine, is already an E. Au Collège Jacques Prévert. Jacques Prévert, by the way, is a lovely, a really fantastic poet, and we will do some of his poetry at some time in the future. Okay, une journée type. You could have type, or une journée typique would be fine as well. Pour Clara, commence, begins, and that's the third person, isn't it, about the day. And then à 7 heures du matin, at 7 hours in the morning. They may well accept just à 7 heures with the figures, but I wanted you to really practice writing it out in this way. When she gets up. Quand elle se lève. So the ending is the same as it would be with je me lève. She has breakfast. Elle prend son petit déjeuner. If it was I have my breakfast, it would have an S on the end, but il, elle, on is prend. Her breakfast, son petit déjeuner. She's female, but petit déjeuner is masculine, so it's going to be son petit déjeuner. How would you say he has his breakfast? It would be il prend, and then this would say the same, son petit déjeuner. Then gets on the school bus, puis elle monte, and I would do as they've said, just repeat the pronoun. She gets onto, they say she mounts into, elle monte dans, she gets on into, up into, le quart de ramassage scolaire. And you learnt that through the exercise 4. Her school starts at 8:15. So school, you could say les cours commencent, so lessons begin à 8h15 du matin, at 8:15 in the morning, or à 8h15. I just noticed that in the teacher book they only gave les cours commencent as the answer, but it would be totally okay as well to say son école, her school, or son collège. Both are, the collège is masculine, so it would be son collège, although école is feminine, because it begins with a vowel, the way to say hers would be son école, my school would be mon école. And there are 7 lessons a day. Et il y a, there are 3 separate words. It there has 6 ou 7 cours par jour. Sa matière préférée est l'anglais. Her favourite subject. How would you say his favourite subject? It would be exactly the same. Sa matière préférée. Because the teacher is very nice. Parce que le prof ou la prof est très sympa. And whether it's le or la, that wouldn't have an agreement, because the word it's standing for is sympathique, which has an E on the end anyway, and there's no change. She doesn't like geography. Elle n'aime pas la géographie. You should by now know, of course, that there's always an article there, the, because she finds it difficult. Parce qu'elle trouve ça difficile. She finds that difficult. Now that's the one that's given in the teacher book, but I would also accept elle la trouve difficile, parce qu'elle la trouve, because she finds it, referring to la géographie, difficult. Her lessons finish at 4 p.m. Ses cours finissent. Her lessons finish at 4 heures de l'après-midi ou à 16 heures. And his lessons would be exactly the same. Ses cours finissent à 4 heures. So I hope that you've managed on that. Certainly when you come to do writing, when you've got an open-ended writing task to do, we deliberately say to you, don't just stick with saying what you do, but also always include what other people do as well, because that just forces the issue. It shows that you know how to conjugate, how to change the verbs according with il ou elle. So very often it is the same. J'aime has an E on the end as well. But there are some where it and se lève, for example, is exactly the same. But there are others like elle prend, she takes, where the je form would have an S on the end.